believe in your own power and believe in the power of groups, small groups of people to change the world. I mean, it happened in the Renaissance. It's happened, in every religious movement, wherever it's ended up today. But believe in the power of a human and yourself to change the world, and with a small group of people. We can't do it ourselves. We need people around us. We need to expand our circle. 99.9% of businesses are small, and we can change the world.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another groundbreaking inspired conversation. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. And, I believe it hasn't happened in this way before. And it's not a part of the broader conversation on the internet today, which makes it that much more exciting for me to have it today. And our guest today is not your typical businessman or entrepreneur. Jeffrey Stegman, and you've seen him and heard of him, is the co-founder of Focused Life Force Energy, FLFE, a groundbreaking consciousness technology company that's quietly transforming the way people live, feel, and do business. But what makes Jeffrey truly fascinating isn't just the tech, it's the way he sees business itself, not as a means to an end, but as a spiritual path. With a background in biological sciences and over 4 decades in manufacturing, engineering, and product development, including running the oldest private mint in North America, Jeffrey has lived in the heart of the industrial world. And yet, through his deep inner work, a relentless exploration of consciousness, and his partnership with Clayton Stegman, he's emerged with an entirely new approach to leadership, to service, and to human evolution. In this conversation, we'll dive into the consciousness economy and explore why the level of consciousness, the LOC, of a business, its people, and even its physical location changes everything. We'll learn about the frameworks Jeffrey has developed to embed higher consciousness into business operations and how those principles have been put into action at FLFE. We'll also go beyond the surface into the unseen forces that affect our lives, our health, and our capacity to create, and how high consciousness fields can be harnessed, not just for personal transformation, but for collective awakening. Whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or someone who is dedicated to creating positive change, this conversation is for you. Please welcome with me, Jeffrey Stegman. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Great to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I feel very blessed. We had many conversations over the last 2 years, sometimes 2-3 hours long. And I want to preface this conversation by saying that you and Clayton and the operation and the way that you do business has profoundly shifted my perception, my thoughts, and our actions in a very, very positive way. And I sort of want to start with a big boom and ask you a question. You are someone like us who believes in positive change and who is showing up daily to do your part to help with that and assist in that for the broader collective. In our world today, what is the greatest force for change?
Well, there's a lot happening with government right now. There's a lot of change, a lot of things working. And I've always been fascinated by the church and the time when the Catholic Church was the power that got things done. I mean, and really ruled the world. But this time, right now, it's business. And we can see that in some of the negative effects of some businesses who, it's starting to really be called out in big ways now. But and many people have that opinion that business is bad because of the bad things a few businesses have done. And it's really only a few. I mean, 99.9% of businesses are small and medium-sized businesses. So it's a small fraction that's doing the harm, but the power is in business. It's a way for us all to participate, for um, to take our vision, what it is that we want to bring forth in terms of change or just service to people, making lives better in some way. That vision that we have, we with a group of people can take it to the world, and more so than ever now. That a small group can affect the world in a big way. We're creative, powerful beings, and our visions, ripple throughout. Especially when they're put into action in thought, language, and action as well, with a group of people where you're coming together and you're expanding this reality that you've created, that you're bringing forth this new way of being or some better way of serving people, and it's rippling out. It doesn't matter what the size is. It really even doesn't matter what you're doing, as long as it's positive and it's affecting the world with a positive intent. But the way you operate as well is changing the world, because as we move from business as pure competition, cutthroat, bury the competition, dominate, to a more cooperative, love-based, consciousness aware business model, where we're understanding the underlying dynamics, that starts to change the world just in itself.
You have you and Clayton both have shared a phrase with us many, many times: business as a spiritual path, which is actually quite counterintuitive, probably for most of our audience, for most even entrepreneurs in the spiritual or freedom arena or consciousness arena, where business is sort of the necessary evil that they tolerate in order to do what they really think they're here to do for. And you've grown up in an industrial, in a business family, big business family. This is practically has been in your blood all your life. And you've gone through these transformational stages throughout your life of, here's how business used to be done. These are the rules. We need to maximize profit and everything that we've been taught about business. And then you go and you change that model without sacrificing abundance in the process, or without sacrificing the well-being of the staff and the people that work with you. How do you do that? Where does that begin in your thought process? When did it sort of dawn on you, I can do something different here, coming from a traditional business family?
Well, and the big aha was, you're not sacrificing anything. In fact, everything's better. People have, people working in the business have a much better experience, a better career, more satisfaction, better profitability. Everything's better. So this started for me really before I met Clayton, though Clayton coached me. So I was one of his clients in Business as a Spiritual Path. And I had used coaches all my life, always more to learn. And the one I was with said, look, I've taken you to sort of purpose and meaning in business. I need to take you to the next level and recommend you to Clayton. So I applied that Business as a Spiritual Path in the Mint and other businesses that I was doing before, kind of right before we started FLFE. So, and this was not your usual business. It was small and two businesses, one small, one medium, where it was multi-generational. So my father was in the business, my grandfather was in the business, my father, and then my brother and I bought out everyone and took over the business. So there already was in place a family atmosphere where people in the company, in the staff, you walk around, their kids, what's going on with them, somebody's sick. So that already was set it apart from people are just a number, and you fire them and hire them, and they come and go depending on profitability. It wasn't like that. So I have to, give props to kind of the family traditions there, which were very people oriented. But what Clayton brought to me was this idea that in practice of, I don't need to go and do a meditation retreat or take some kind of spiritual path. Like my business can be my spiritual path, where I use it as a catalyst for pointing out those things in me that want to grow up and change, and trauma that wants to release, old beliefs that don't work anymore. Because in a business, in a group, but particularly in a business, you get your buttons pushed. So there's frictions, right? We got to get this order out. These things have to happen. We got this quality issue. And so in those moments, then I could bring my awareness to, okay, what's happening for me? And work on clearing those bits until I was able to be in what I called the no problem zone. So no matter what was happening, whoever's in front of me, I would pretty much sit in my office and meditate. And, there were things going on, and I would jump in whenever needed. And people would come in with an issue, and there was just a way of, it was like a different consciousness level that just saw everything as an opportunity for improvement, no matter what it was.
I love that.
And all people needed to do was to be able to say what they saw or what was happening, and then help them to reframe it and to take it into action together to change whatever it was. So that was like a shift from doing to being, and to watching those triggers come up. Then Clayton had some great energetic medicine tools to kind of clear the source of those triggers, to the point where there just weren't very many left in that environment.
There's one thing in a leadership position, for example, to take an approach, and it always in some way, shape, or form will trickle down. But another thing is, okay, so here's how I'm doing it. Like I'm Jeff. I'm seeing this as an opportunity. I'm meditating on this, and I see the path here. I communicate it to my team, and then we walk it. Another thing is to institutionalize this approach, to replicate it throughout your entire structure, whether that's 2 people or 200 people. When did you start thinking about the intricate details of business that, have a structure as business was set out to be in the old paradigm? When did you start thinking about changing all of those so they would be aligned with your approach?
Well, the old paradigm in business was silos. So you have the purchasing department, you have the HR department, you have production, you have sales, you have customer service, and they're all separated from each other. They all have their own views, their own castle, little world happening. And their first tendency is to protect their world and point the fingers to, the next one down the stream. So it was a dysfunctional system. I mean, it worked okay, but that was the tradition. Was, you get in a role, you stay in the role, and you defend the role. And what I saw, I went to a systems thinking conference, and I started reading systems thinking books, which kind of look at a larger picture of coordination that comes from nature and natural systems. And we took out all the departments. There was no more purchasing, no more sales. Still had its own thing, because you just have to deal with salespeople. But you have, and they're great, and they're very independent. That's what makes them good. So everything else became one big group. And so they were all responsible for everything together. And they all had the responsibility from when an order came in to when it was paid for, not just shipped, but paid for. So it included, receivables, purchasing, everything. So I think that was the first little sliver of, we have to break the system down, throw everybody in a room, and start to work to coordinate together.
When I think about FLFE, because that is a consciousness business, like
Yep.
through and through, I feel the conversation around this subject is much, much easier because it's in everything that you do already. So when somebody is hired or some new team member, or it's clear that this is what this is all about, but let's just take completely different businesses. How do you begin the conversation of what is our level of consciousness? Like where are we here? Are we at anger? Are we at frustration? Are we excitement? How do you bring this conversation to the table?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's all about speaking to people in terms they can understand, and meeting people where they are. Because there's a whole, Hawkins is one, but there's a whole series of other consciousness patterns and beliefs, and they may show you something different. And what we realized was that the way you talk to someone who's on the factory floor, who's maybe they got through high school, they're really smart, they're really good at what they do, they can run a machine, they're highly mechanical, they're running, say, a coining press, we're talking about that world, but maybe they're in a lumber yard, cutting lumber and stacking lumber. So they have a way of viewing the world that is around the strongest create the most value. The badasses create the most value and are respected. So the top of the chain for them is the biggest badass around. So when you're working with them, you can't, you have to be a badass. I mean, you have to speak kind of to them in a way they understand. And they'll follow you if they think you're strong and you're really good at what you do. So, and as you go through different levels, people respond differently. And that system is spiral dynamics, integral spiral dynamics. Ken Wilber was part of that. So it's more based on value system than the Hawkins map, which is really levels of consciousness as you go. But does that answer your question?
Yes, well, I'm thinking about, and I'm familiar with it because we have a friendship and we also have a business partnership, which we cherish, and we treat both in with the same love and respect, which isn't always the case between businesses. It's like here we are friends, but here where it's business, in the old paradigm, it's kind of like dog eat dog, right? So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about, in practical terms, let's say that two businesses or two entrepreneurs want to do business together. A common thing is called due diligence in business, which is looking at each other's numbers, and you go, okay, how much do you revenue, profit, what are your margins, all of the classic. But you look at also at a completely different set of numbers. You have a different process in place, which plays very much into business as a spiritual path. Can you share about that process a little bit?
Well, when you're talking about a company, so we'll start to get into the consciousness underpinnings of business. So a company has a level of consciousness. Now, if you're not
What does
used
that
to,
mean? What does that mean?
yeah. So yeah, if you're not used to, if you think consciousness is between your ears, it's much bigger than that. Everything has a level of consciousness. Well, just think about an accounting department. So if an accounting department is not following the rules, is cooking the books, putting, second set of books, is trying to avoid taxes, it will never climb above integrity. It's down below, right? So you can measure that about a company and know that they're out of integrity. I mean, you could have looked at Enron and looked at their history and know when they started, cooking the books. So,
Day two, probably.
but you can also tell by looking at it, like if you really dig in, you see that things aren't being done right. So, paying your taxes on time, doing all the government forms, doing accounting correctly, that's kind of a prerequisite for the level of consciousness of a company to be at integrity, or like 200, just over 200.
I got to ask a question here. So, how do you reconcile that with knowing everything you know about, like, the taxation system and how that came to be, and the government systems and corruption and all of that? How do you reconcile that integrity connects to that? Like, I'm curious, genuinely,
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, the position we took, and I still take, is kind of pristine, inner pristine, outer pristine. It's like to try to be as clean and free of triggers and unconscious beliefs as possible, and to be very ethically clean. So you do things right, and you do right by people if something goes wrong, right? And you maybe even do it overboard, it seems to some people, or a traditional business, but you're building that connection between you, whether it's with a supplier or if it's an employee, that you're building the field. And we'll talk more about that later. You're building the consciousness between you by being generous. So it's like being generous doesn't take that much, right? But if your basis is being generous, then it starts to ripple out into the field or consciousness of the business.
So back to the other set of numbers, like you said,
Right.
the consciousness of a business.
Oh yeah.
How does that process work for you when you think about partnering or working with someone, for example?
Well, certainly the way I operate, or have been, and my brother did too, and we do in FLFE, is just towing the line, just doing exactly what's required in terms of taxes and government and everything to stay. And it actually raises the consciousness of it, because it's measurable, and it's the law of the land, even though we all agree that there's tremendous waste, and there's some basic inequities with the whole system. But that's my stance. It doesn't mean that's everybody's stance.
No, I respect that. Yeah.
So when we look at it, we'd look at another company, you'd see where's the consciousness level of the company. Is there any like basic issue there that's causing them to be out of integrity? So integrity is just a great way to think about it. So it could be in accounting, could be HR and the way you're hiring and firing people. It could be in the claims that you make. So it's really important in marketing. They love to make claims. I mean, it's like, let's put on the best shoe. Let's look really good. And it can venture into falsehood, where it's really not true that every time, everybody gets enlightened in FLFE. There's a level of consciousness of the marketing department, of the marketing that you do, of the content that you put out. How true is it? And for someone that thinks, and that's the old tradition, right? You just lie through your teeth. You just tell people what they want to hear. You sell more product. But when you're really thinking about the consciousness of the business, and the reason to do this is because the higher the level, the more light it's shining and the more attraction that it has for people. So people naturally want to move into it, where when they hear a lie and they know it's an exaggeration or a lie, you just take a step back. There's like a repulsion that happens. So having a high consciousness business increases the level of revenue we've seen, where people tend to come in and be attracted to the company.
So you clearly also, because of the work that you're doing, you have ways of measuring these things beyond the things that show up on paper or that you can see, which is applied kinesiology. And that is not a tool that every business owner would have available to them. So short of knowing about applied kinesiology, what is a good way for an entrepreneur or business owner to apply these principles and also use them in a practical way where they go, okay, so before I enter this relationship, partnership, or I hire someone, what am I looking for? What is it that what would give certain things away or show them in a true light?
Well, I think integrity is, back to that word, is something you would look for. And that would be, like for a company, you'd look at their marketing, you'd look at their products, you look at any research that's been done about the products. How integrous is that? I mean, there is a lot of bogus research out there that tries to make the product look good, and it really, if you dig into it, it doesn't justify the claim that's being made. So you would look, is there integrity in all of these things? Now, it's hard to check on somebody's, whether they're paying their taxes or not, but in talking to someone, you can get a sense if they're avoiding taxes. Like some people get obsessed about it, and that's all. They're just, everything they do is avoiding taxes. And to me, you're telling the universe that you don't want to pay taxes, right? That's easy. Well, the easiest way to not pay taxes is not have a business anymore, or to have your revenue go down. So it's not an abundant way of being. And part of what we bring to any business is who we are and who we're being. And if you're if you talk to someone and you're thinking about partnering with them, and you bring up taxes, and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't paid any taxes in 5 years. There's something there that's driving them that, is not an abundant mindset. And it to me, that's, and the experience we've had, the more abundant of a mindset you hold, in fact, you're blessing the money going out. So we've started this practice recently in FLFE where we're blessing the cash flow, the circulation. So we're asking the accountant and bookkeeper to bless the paychecks, the money going out, and bless the suppliers when we pay them. So, and of course, you're blessing the money coming in, but it's that whole cycle that you want to bless the whole thing. And it seems maybe a bit woo-woo, but it's part of holding that abundant mindset. It's like a practice, spiritual practice, to hold an abundant mindset.
Well, if you bless the food on the table, and whether that's silently or loudly, it's a different story, but I don't think that's woo-woo at all. And, as a matter of fact, when you talk about it, it sounds like, bringing radical awareness to every aspect. So you don't develop those blind spots where you go, that's a shortcut. I don't know exactly why, but I'm taking a shortcut here, and I've been taking it for so long, which brings everything out in the open, which is also transparency. Which brings me to what you just said, is there's a difference between doing a task and even fulfilling it in its requirements and who we are while we're doing it. So you could have two people do the exact same task and fulfill the requirements of the task, but the outcome could be vastly different depending on who they are while they're doing it. or you would say in your language what their LOC is while they're doing it, their level of consciousness. And that kind of sounds in my world like, okay, if I'm responsible for me and my actions, I have a lot of control over that. But how do you do that in a business with 40, 50, 60, 100 people?
Well, the hiring process is super important. And, we do things in a normal way as other companies. And we have a job description and ads, and people come in with resumes. But we're trying to discover in the interview process and with our kinesiology measuring, it's not just their LOC, but what's their intent. So the LOC of their intent would be, for instance, someone that has a super high, say 999 on a Hawkins map, intent towards all of creation. I mean, they just love everything. I mean, they're curious, they're interested, they want to do things well. It's just built into them. So part of that is doing really behavior-based interviewing, where you're like, okay, when this happened in your previous, what did you do? And really try to understand how they act under pressure, how they act in different situations. To what you're looking for is someone who's taking the high road all the time, who's not like, oh yeah, I got him back, like that was. So you want that taking the high road, people that love people, that are just in love with humanity and everything. So when you have people like that who then are doing a job, even if it's, say, a mundane job, but they're really they're a positive person. And we all know those positive people and negative people that act that way in certain situations. So trying to determine who those are, and then those are the people you really nurture and keep and move up in the organization who exhibit that kind of positiveness.
The the experiences that you have shared with us over time have, like I said in the beginning, completely shifted my own perception of business. And I was one of those people, grew up like you in a business family. My dad, a businessman, that was the talk of the table. And some of these classic principles, I just soaked up.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally, when my heart wants to help create positive change, and I also realize I live in a world that requires me to make a living and pay bills and not be frustrated with survival, every day. I'm fighting this. I'm fighting the necessity of the business. I literally was not realizing how I was standing in the way of that. If and I know a lot of people, especially during these times, are shifting from the maybe a 9 to 5 situation and this old way of doing something because I need to make money, to more purpose based. And a lot of times that means they're going into business for themselves. They're going in the entrepreneur route. What would be your first advice to somebody who is at that juncture, who whether it's a product or service? What would be your first advice?
Well, keep your day job. I mean, both Clayton and I worked while we developed FLFE, and we didn't have a paycheck for the first 6 years. So or maybe it was 5 years, I started getting one. But so there was, there's a financial necessity sometimes if you're building something new to still have that revenue coming in. Maybe you have another way of bringing revenue in, but it's sort of a basic thing. I've seen it a couple of times with people I know who just say, I'm done, and they quit and they want to start something else. And then they're in that distress, that financial distress, which then distracts from the ability to do that. And the second is it takes time and dedication. So when we were developing FLFE, I was working full time, and then we were full time every night and through the weekend. It was like 80 hours a week. So that if it's something you really care about and you really have a vision for bringing it into the world, it's going to take some time, like a dedicated period of years where you say, okay, I'm going to give it all, and really commit to this. And then the third is getting good people around you. I always know whatever I'm doing, there's somebody that can do it better, and find a good team around you, and then just treat them really well. Suppliers, outside suppliers, it's like back to the LOC of the business. There's some companies who delay payment to suppliers. That's part of how they create their cash flow. They go, we'll pay you in 90 days or 120 days. And what did that do with my relationship with them when people were doing that to me? I was like, I didn't want to do business with them, and we'd raise the price. So it erodes the field, or the space between us to act in that way. So I think it's really important that you treat your suppliers really well, like it's your business, and pay them well, pay them on time, that kind of thing.
There's an interesting thing that you do with your team in customer service, and I don't know if this is public knowledge, but I know it, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So most companies today that have customer service, specifically on the phone, they have first outsourced to sort of cheap labor centers in the world. Usually not the same quality, because these people are not actually connected to the business. They're just contractors. And then now they start outsourcing to AI and AI bots and all that. You are walking the diametrically opposed path, where you're telling your team that is talking to not even customers, but people that are on a free trial or need help with something. There's one thing that I remember you saying is, we ask our customer service staff to let the creator, let God tell them how much time this needs, or how much of their attention this needs, and to trust that. Now, that is not a metric you can necessarily measure or put on paper, or go later on and say, okay, the average phone call is so long. And so now people will hear this and say, well, good and well, you're a spiritual quantum consciousness business, but we're selling windows. I can't tell my people to trust that God will tell them how long that takes. Is that true? Or can the same principle be applied successfully in those kinds of businesses as well?
I think it can. I mean, it's really about connecting with the person. So if you say you're selling windows, and you've got a homeowner who's 85 years old, woman, she needs extra time. And she wants to really understand what you're selling her. So those, I would say, we all have that connection with each other, and that when we get on the phone with someone, we can tell. Now, having a clock ticking like a call center, I think it just railroads that ability that we all have to connect with each other and really know how long it should take.
Have you seen a visible or measurable effect with that sort of policy, like whichever way, in terms of how would you measure that? Customer satisfaction, how people, do they sign up, or do they stay, or are we making more revenue? Like, how would you measure the success of that?
Retention in our case, because it's a subscription service. So you really, like, do they stay? Like, another company might say, do you buy again? Would you buy the product again? In this case, do you stay? And sometimes there might be a financial reason, and then we work with them on that. we really, there's a certain percentage that we discount because we know they really need it and they really appreciate that. And again, that's part of the retention. Then they come back as soon as they, okay, I got the new job, I'm back, I'm back full price. So for us, yeah, retention is huge, and we have very high retention rate, unusually high for subscription service, north of 97%. So that's really unheard of in subscription circles.
Another big issue, and I'm specifically asking for people that are in a more conscious state of being and conscious entrepreneurs, conscious business owners, spiritually minded. A lot of times, one of the big issues is their subconscious or conscious aversion to money itself or to profit.
Yeah.
And sort of a self-sabotaging theme. On the one hand, I need it, right? Because on the other hand, I'm like, I don't like money and it's the root of all evil. Did you go through that phase personally ever? Was it ever an issue for you?
No, I didn't go through that. It tends to go through my fingers pretty fast. But the flow is always there. It's like I trust in the flow. Yeah, that it's an unconscious pattern or belief that we could have, and it doesn't just end with money. If you have that, it's the abundance of your relationships, abundance of love around you, the abundance of fun that you're having. I mean, and I understand that money is the epitome of that, but on the abundance side, but it's something I think we should all take abundance courses, and I've taken a few myself. We should all find a good practitioner, a good healer, or even therapist that could help us with that. And often it's in the family too, like cutting corners to make ends meet. And so you find yourself being cheap and not spending money where you really need to grow the business, to bring on that new supplier, bring on that new employee.
There's something that you said to me off camera, and you've said it in our conversations many times, sort of. It's something that I think you say without even thinking about it. It's like other people use certain words. You use this expression, the field between us. And almost everything is about fields, ultimately, right? But what does that mean, the field between two or more people in business, but outside of it as well? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, conscious just interpenetrates and is part of all parts of business. I mean, we didn't talk much about the land and the building. Like my old Mint, I mean, that was 1835 is when that started. It had some embedded thought patterns there. And until I created FLFE and we put FLFE on that property, that's when things started to loosen up. And we could get away to, do away with the departments. But the field between people, that is where the power really lies. So if you can just think about it as goodwill between two people. You have a good feeling towards someone, that as you go through life, you're either building that with people or you're degrading it with people. So when you're consciously building that and you work with your teams to build that with each other, it's this divine spark, really, this two or more gathered, where it's an exponential power increase that happens. And because it's consciousness, it's also creating like connection between people. So like we said, our natural ability to be one and connect with everyone is enhanced, and our ability to kind of pull information down that we couldn't think of or wouldn't know. And first responders is a great example of that. And this has been studied pretty well, particularly earthquake search and rescue, where the teams works together. They'll fly to this location. They know each other. They have each other's backs. Same happens in the military. And they start to communicate non-verbally and coordinate. It's like the one person, I think there's a person over there. There's no other reason telling them that, but they just have the feeling. And there's a big slab, and all of a sudden 3 people show up to move the slab. I mean, it's this unspoken coordination that's happening, and it's just incredibly effective and powerful. So that we can create, and businesses and armies and people through the ages have tried to recreate this, and it's not well understood. But to bring that, to foster that, we can create teams within the business that will just move mountains.
I tend to find that if in a partnership, for example, my intention or our intention is, well, the first and foremost is always a win-win. Like before we even start, my intention is that everyone involved, affected, and who gets in touch with it. Like that means everyone, it must be a win for everyone. Right. If those conditions aren't met yet, then we need to tweak it, work it out, talk about it.
We have a name for that.
What's it called?
Winfinite.
Winfinite. I love that. Exactly. I almost forgot it. Winfinite. Thank you for reminding me. So and this is again such a typical thing that I used to run into the spiritual arena is people want to do business together, but then they try to get as much as possible for as little as possible, like cheap out on it. And there's this weird interdependency then, and this weird, like, I feel guilty. The other one, they can't make ends meet, but they want to give more. So I have seen that on the other side, when we take this win-win approach, which we do, and everybody starts winning in a beautiful way, the Winfinite principle, that creativity explodes, and the field between the people also, like there's so much beautiful energy that gets created. What is away from this side of the spectrum that I just described, and sort of the lack side to this side? What is a good reframing here?
Well, I think that generosity with these suppliers that you were talking about, this win-win, Winfinite, that the reframe is that it's really small cost in terms of the reward, the benefit. So when that field starts to rise with your suppliers or with teams within, the rewards are huge. I mean, the problems that they can solve could be things that you haven't been able to solve for a decade. And like you said, the creativity ramps up. That you can't pay for that. So just a little bit of generosity goes a long way.
I agree with that. Also, one is fear-based and the other is trust-based. Like one is you sometimes invest, and that might sometimes mean that you're pulling a lot or all your funds in one direction, which requires trust. So the fear-based mind goes, oh, I'll pull back some, or I won't do it, or I'll try to pay as little as possible. All of these things I feel are born from the old paradigm of lack, and I gotta win, and somebody has to lose, and I have to get ahead. And to me, this is so fascinating that I see it most amplified in a community that is otherwise very aware. You know what I mean? Otherwise very aware, but I see these patterns still play out. And my deep intention is to assist people in healing that. And like you say, seeing business as a spiritual path and not something to be fought or something to be pushed out of the equation. How can we heal our relationship with business and with abundance, revenue, co-creation? How can we do that?
That's a big question. I mean, trust, to me, trust is the word. And where I've come, it's like trusting the flow. trusting the cash flow, the money flow, is there's a bigger picture happening. And to me, there was quite a bit of surrender that needed to happen to the trust in the process, or trust in the people, that once I've done my vetting and I've done, gotten to know someone, is to put my trust in them. And how do I heal that protective, that protection that I might have had with myself? For me personally, what I had to do was feel the hurt or the like contraction that was happening, and just stop and try to feel into what's there, where it's coming from in my body. And there's energetic medicine tools that Clayton had shared with me, related to just staying with that feeling until it starts to go. Just really love it. So the love piece really was important for me. So it was loving all those parts of myself in order to talk to them. And then loving everyone else. Like I said, in these businesses, I knew the families, I knew the people. They've been working there 30 years. That there's a love there. It's like a family love, where I've got your back, you've got my back, and that trust builds over time. It's small little commitments and deliveries. Commitment, delivery. I mean, that you build that trust, and they say, okay, he's got my back. Or so. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does.
my path. Yeah.
Well, you said two words. You said surrender and you said trust. Those are two big words you said, and that's my personal experience. And in order to really resolve and dissolve and transmute all the limiting things that were going on inside of me, for me, it had to go through complete loss of all material things. Like I went there, and in that place, I literally surrendered, trusted fully in the flow that isn't seen but is always there, which then like created this beautiful upward spiral where I was living some of the highest highs before any material evidence showed up in my world. And that was the turning point, right? That was for me. I had to go through that. I don't think everyone has to, by the way. That's just my journey. But you now, as both as co-founders of FLFE, FLFE seems to be the epitome of all these principles, because it's lived on all levels, including the service. So you're not just applying this new path to how you do business, but the business itself is a spiritual service, if you will, a quantum technology, but a spiritual service. If you talk to this about someone from more traditional business fields, and if you share business as a spiritual path and how you do things, are people beginning to be more open? Is there resistance? Or is your success speaking for itself and they go, well, the numbers prove it?
I'm seeing more openness, much more than 10 years ago. I was in a business groups and an entrepreneur forum for a number of years, and there was a lot of resistance in the beginning. But for the most part, people came around to, well, there's something behind just what we see every day, that there is a consciousness there. And I think it really shows up in creativity, in problem solving, and really bringing down the new things, where when you can show that to someone, demonstrate it or do it together, that's when they really start to open up, because there's things that you just wouldn't know otherwise, but they just become evident in the space between us. And building that field does take some time. And we've seen in our conversations together that things just show up. that weren't evident before, and they just become evident, and they're just like obvious. But they weren't something we'd thought of before. So, yeah, to me, things are starting to loosen up a bit, and there's still people holding on to the old ways for sure.
Well, we're doing something strange. Yes, we're friends, but even as business partners, we're doing something strange. We're meeting without having a specific thing on the agenda. And among businesses, there's a meeting to talk about this or that. We do that sometimes, but a lot of times we simply meet and allow for the field between us to tell us what wants to be shared, what wants to be talked about. And that is, and we do it without being attached to a specific outcome. That's another thing that in traditional businesses sounds completely stupid. Like, why would you do something where you don't have a clear goal of where you want to go with this? But it seems to create a tremendous amount of creativity and success.
Yeah, Clayton's a master at creating these fields. And one of the principles is to recognize the container. So in lots of traditions, you would start a meeting or a group with some kind of invocation that sets the space. And then at the end, some kind of closing that closes the space. And it's amazing what that does, because the energy builds in that space that you've invocated. And like you said, there's like nothing on the agenda, but there's things that need to be said into the space. And Clayton's a master at this, where it may be obvious, we may all know it, but it needs to be said, because when it's said, it really sinks in. It may be something about our relationship together, who knows what, and for a team, they can have time together, kind of unstructured time, where they can, have lunch together and talk and create. But there's in our research department, we did that for like 9 months, and Dr. Gary Schwartz, or now our research director, yeah, he felt that way. Like, what are we doing here? but by after like the third month, what the field that we would be in, we'd be in these 900 fields together, and so much was happening, and so much learning was occurring. So then it became evident. Okay, that's why we did that. And that's
trust and surrender, huh? Trust and surrender.
Yeah, it is. And the mind does not like it. It does not like it. So I've really had to learn to say, okay, this is the way I want it to be. And I'm just going to wait and see and ask and see what happens.
My mind has grown to love it now. It's a trusted field. So there's like, with good friends, you can be quiet, you can be silent next to each other, and it's totally fine. And that's the kind of comfort, that we share, the kind of comfortable zone. But a lot of our audience are now, after 2 years of us speaking about it and sharing it, very familiar with FLFE. They have experienced it. A lot of them are using the service and are subscribed to it. And a very large number of people have feelable, visible, even measurable results. What a lot of people are not aware of is that you can also put a field on your business, on the things that you do. And we did that too. We have a field on our show and on what we do. It's specifically tied to that. And once we did that, after months and a year, we have seen such visible, feelable, measurable changes in everything, positive everything. Everything has gone up. I would say probably the clarity has gone up, the level of consciousness of the business itself, of the viewers together with us, the monetary success, everything has grown. When a business owner hears this sounds almost like, well, that's a magic thing that you turn on. But how is it different, maybe, or different perspective from having this on your home versus having it on your business?
Well, we talked about the level of consciousness of a business, but we believe there's also a business entity. Now, of course, there's the legal business entity, but that there is a consciousness related to the business. And this seems to happen only with businesses that have a positive intent. Like if you're Monsanto, that would not be the case. But that there is a consciousness group or field that forms or entity. And Clayton came across this spending time with Dorothy McLean at a seminar, and they talked about Findhorn in northeastern Scotland, where they connected to the consciousness of a farm for growing, and they had really incredible results for what they were able to produce. So we believe that there is this conscious entity related to business, and it wants to work through us to bring the business into the world. And we can listen to it. So that's one of the practices we do in FLFE. We have attunements once a quarter. But when the FLFE service goes onto that entity, then it has additional energy and it has additional consciousness, rising. So that's when people, and we've heard this over and over, particularly in the case where there's been a bankruptcy in a business or some shock, and things were just stagnant for a new owner and they couldn't get it going. And once they put the FLFE business subscription on the entity itself, so you have to have the level, the actual legal entity name, that identifies the consciousness that's associated with it. And then it would clear that trauma and things took off. I mean, one of our customers, it was dramatic within weeks of it coming off. So there's more going on behind the scenes. I mean, we've talked about the people in it, the field between them, the consciousness of the earth and the buildings. That's the FLFE's normal area. Cleaning that up, and now this conscious entity. It's there. In an FLFE, when we would do an attunement, everybody would listen in their own way. Like everybody in the business would get in a circle. And they would, in one of them we did, one person would see roots, another would see like a big basement, others would see, like building, the bottom floor of a building. And when you went all around, it all became clear that it was building our foundation of the business, the structures, the things that we needed to do in order to grow. So it was speaking through us to the group to help us in the next phase of the business.
When a business, and I want to specifically talk about this side because it might be a little different, but is there common feedback from specifically business owners who put their business on a field that certain things continually show up? Like on a residential service, I know that people almost immediately after a few days feel calmer, they sleep better, there's more goodwill, more forgiveness. Those are sort of the things that show up very quickly for most people. Is there something that begins to show up fairly quickly on the business side?
Yeah, when the business itself, I mean, the land and the building is on FLFE. What I saw in my more traditional businesses was more of this creativity and more energy. So there's always this late afternoon coffee run, and people would start to check out and be ready to go home. And that just wasn't happening in the same way. I mean, people were energized through the day. So that was one of the things I saw right away. But the coordination of the teams together and them really working together and building the field together, That took more time, maybe a month or so, where you could see that there was less squabbling, less issues with each other, and more like, how do we get this done? And more love there in the way they interacted with each other. So those, I think, in the way teams interact, the way people have energy in the business, are some of the first things that show up.
My vision after 2 years of working with you and being in the field 24/7 and having the field on our business as well, my vision has become that, let's say 2, 3, 4 years from now, when people, let's say they move into a new home, there's, the checklist of things that you do. You have the water turned on, and you have the electricity in your name, and the internet, the heat, whatever you need to turn on. And then part of that checklist will be an FLFE subscription. My vision is that this becomes so everywhere that it's normal to do that. Now, if, let's just say, my vision comes to fruition, what do you think would change in people's lives personally, or in the general, in the mass perception of people? And what would change in terms of businesses if this were prevalent, if more people than not had a field in which they bathed all day?
Well, for people in their homes, especially new homes, most new home, I mean, not new, but new to them, they've been sold because there was a transition of some kind. And when we did a study of houses for sale, there was a very large percentage that were low consciousness, below 200. So just right then, you're stepping into somebody else's energy, somebody else's whatever was happening at the time, the reason they had to sell it. And they seem to be restraints to people being able to be fully in their own energy and fully themselves. Because in the FLF, in the clearing that the FLFE does, and in the higher field, things seem to drop away that are restraints. So I would say we would see, rise in people really coming into their full power and full vision, and taking those visions into the world and changing the world. So I think it would be really a groundswell of actualized, energized people.
When I think about it, you're the very uniqueness here is, so your business, the service of your business is associating and maintaining high consciousness fields with a specific piece of property, or a phone service, or a business service. Now, that is unique in the world and hasn't existed as such before. So that's the uniqueness. Then you use business as a spiritual path. You run it completely different. And then the biggest piece, running it all, is what you said in the very beginning, is, what is my intention? So what is your intention for this business, for FLFE? What is the main driver of all of this?
Clayton and I were just talking about this today, and starting to write that out. Why grow? And for me, it's I get such juice or satisfaction, and just really a feeling of unbelievable gratitude when one person has a change in their life that seems like a miracle to them, where before they were depressed, now they've jumped out of it and they can see a way forward. It's those small incremental changes in people's lives that drives me forward, and wants it to be everyone to be able to have this support. And it isn't like we want to create dependence. It feels like the world has moved away from its pristine state. I mean, it's all clear that's true. But especially with the EMFs and other kinds of energies, that for us to be who we really are, the fullness of who we could be, that's what I want to see, is that goes forward where people have that support, they can be the fullness of who they are. Maybe they won't need it sometime, and maybe no one will need it at some point, and that's fine. It's just, but we feel like we're in this time of transition now, and it can go multiple ways. And for people to be in a pristine state or a pristine space and be able to really move into their fullness of who they are will carry us through this transition to, we believe, to a positive side. So for me, that's really important, is that one person at a time change. And that's my intent, is for that to go as wide as possible.
You know what's funny, Jeff, is that virtually all of our guests, whether they're business owners or not, with our intentions, we're all working ourselves out of a job eventually. That's what we're doing here. And I feel very good about this. I always say there'll come a day, the last show, and it won't be necessary any longer. It won't be needed, and we'll go and do different things. And I assume someday in the future, FLFE will have served as this incredible, unbelievably unique support system for this period. Like, this is like I call it one of the most important services in the world today. That's just what it is for me. And I mean that. I don't just say that. I mean that. And I think one day in the future, it won't be necessary any longer, and we'll all be happy, and we'll all be okay with it. That would be a very scary thought for most business owners. It's not a scary thought for you, is it?
Mm-mm. No, that's the way we're designing it. I mean, the EMF mitigation we're doing allows in enough stimulation for the body to adapt. I mean, we humans are amazingly adaptable, but if you put yourself in a shielded room and then you have to go outside, you're going to be in deep trouble. We want to mitigate, but allow enough in that we all adapt. I mean, and that's the whole thing, is adapting to the new. And yeah, it'll be a great run in that case, and we'll have done some good in the world, and that will be enough. I mean, that's really, if everyone had to have FLFE and to make it all work, at some point we'd give it away for free, But at this point, it's what's driving us to do the next thing and to create the next upgrade and to have 35 people in the office answering the phone, and for them to have a good life and be able to do, to live in Nelson and be part of FLFE. So there's careers there, and the support. So when anyone calls in, no matter where they are in the world, they talk to a person, and they can really, get help or just be listened to.
There's so many avenues and so many things I would still love to talk about, and I think we're going to do this again. There's so many more things to explore, but for today, when you talk about business as a spiritual path, and specifically with integrity, the research that you all are doing at FLFE, all of these things are very, very unknown to the public. I would say it's like the iceberg. What people see is like the very tip, and that tip is already very impressive. But what's happening beyond the surface, behind the scenes, and I'm blessed. We're blessed, Christine and I, to get a glimpse into that, and you share with us. It's incredible. Like, it's truly incredible. It's an answered prayer in terms of integrity and love for humanity and love for truth. And that's, where is your research going, and what are some of the exciting things that you're doing right now?
Well, I think love for truth really hits the nail on the head, because Dr. Gary Schwartz is one of those rare scientists who's open-minded, but so dedicated to the truth and to deeply statistically, significant truth. And so, what we're doing in FLFE is building a foundation in the research team to have a gold standard in the real sense of the term, where Here we have a nonlinear technology. It's frontier science. Well, then we really have to be very, very rigorous in our evidence of what's happening. And that's what we've done with the EMF studies, where we didn't just do one EMF study and said, look at this, we're great. It's like we replicated, and now we're doing a double-blind study. And the reason we didn't do double-blind all along is because the people that came to us that we recruited were hurting. I mean, their lives were small. They couldn't leave the house. They were sick all the time. They couldn't sleep. And so are we going to withhold from them, the service? We couldn't do it. So, we replicate, and then, finally we're doing double blind. But to take that model then and help other companies and move it into the world in a way where the science can start to be respected again, through transparency. Like, here's all the data, here's the statistical analysis, here's, if we excluded anyone, we tell you why. I mean, it's like everything's there, because it's really needed in the world. And that's where the research department is going to go further into a larger scale. I won't talk too much about that, but there's plans for it to go larger in order to bring this gold standard into the rest, to help kind of rebuild the trust in science. It's really important right now.
And I love and appreciate that so much, and the team. And I've got to meet Dr. Gary Schwartz and the others, and I'm just all over, such a big admirer and fan of your business and the service. Last question, something that would strike 90% of business owners or more as extremely odd. You are offering to anyone a free trial, and most business owners view free trials as the hook, and they say, hey, we get them in with a free trial, and they give us their credit card, and we don't charge it until the trial is over, and then we charge them. And you said, we don't want your credit card. Like, we don't want any financial data. What brought that about? Was there a conscious point to make that decision and not ask for anything and simply give a gift to people?
Yeah, from the very beginning. It was from the very day one. And it's part of the pristine nature of it. I mean, if we're going to offer this service and bring this high consciousness field in the way we do, you can't have an underhanded marketing technique. It's just, I wouldn't do it. You can't do it. It's not, I mean, yes, it gets done, but not for us. And so from the very beginning, we had that, no credit card, and you get a free subscription, a pay it forward subscription that you can put anywhere in the world. So that was like really day one. Those were both there, because it's part of pristine in, pristine out. It's like is there's a high standard in FLFE because we can do no other. I mean, it's inherent in what we're doing is to keep that high standard, so that, and there's something, I had it in the other business too. I don't know. It's a feeling that I get when you're holding a high standard and you're walking that high road all the time in the business, and you're pristine in the way you do things and the way you treat people and the way you treat your suppliers, your employees, pay your bills. There's like a feeling there. It's very clean feeling. And it's its own reward, but it's also an indicator, what's happening.
And it shows on all levels with people's experiences and also with the success that you have numbers that other businesses can only dream of in terms of how many people then actually decide consciously to subscribe for the service in perpetuity and stick around. Those numbers are unheard of for any other business. And I think it's because every step is with integrity. There's no hidden And I know how these tricks work. So I know on page 7, there's going to be we just need your credit card. It's like the timeshare. But we just need your credit card. And we do it the same way. When we say something is a gift, it's a gift. No strings. A gift doesn't have strings. A gift is freely given. And if something costs something, then that costs something. There's a difference in that. And I appreciate the integrity and the honesty in that. And we both, I know I do it with the same love as you, would like to invite those who haven't experienced it to just give it a try. We will put the link in the video description. It's very easy. There are no strings attached. And you'll also get to connect with, a real human being if you wish to, and ask questions and get a few pointers on, how to optimally use the service. But it is something that I would encourage everyone to at least give a try. I can only say it's changed our lives in ways I could have never imagined. So I just want to say thank you for everything that you continue to do. And it continues to get better. That's also your commitment. And thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, and for those that haven't called into the office who are on the service, please give it a try. You'll really enjoy speaking to the person you connect with there.
Yeah, we hear those stories often. People like, I talked to someone at FLFE and it didn't feel like I was talking to a customer service. It was like talking to a friend. And that says a lot. That's something that can make the difference, a big difference in someone's life sometimes. So incredible. Jeff, if people are watching that are either, in the business of change, want to change their business, start a business, or just want to have a positive impact in the world, what are your parting words for today? What is something that you would like to share with them?
I would believe in your own power and believe in the power of groups, small groups of people to change the world. I mean, it happened in the Renaissance. It's happened, in every religious movement, wherever it's ended up today. But believe in the power of a human and yourself to change the world, and with a small group of people. We can't do it ourselves. We need people around us. We need to expand our circle. But I would say, believe in the power you have. It's so powerful that we can change the world. We're 99.9% of businesses are small, and we can change the world.
Beautiful. Jeffrey Stegman, co-founder of FLFE, someone who's walking business as a spiritual path. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, and I look forward to the next one. Inspire Tribe, thank you so much for tuning in. We love you, we appreciate you, and we will be back with you again very, very soon.